Hello, Molly here, your host for the Say It Skillfully podcast, featuring leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, elite athletes, artists, and professionals like you who open up about what's been hard, defining moments and learnings and finding their true north and succeeding on their terms. Career transitions are an evergreen topic. So today I'm excited for you to hear from my guest, who has developed a thriving 30-year corporate career and then transitioned to lead in the nonprofit sector. At Texas Instruments, her experience included global marketing, communications, branding, and public affairs. In 2017, she wrapped up that chapter and went on to even greater impact as president and CEO of the North Texas Food Bank, a $200 million nonprofit focused on eradicating hunger in a diverse 13-county area. She is at the helm of 200 employees and 35,000 volunteers, who in their last year provided access to a record 106 million physical meals. She currently serves on the boards of Feeding Texas and the International Women's Forum Dallas chapter, which is how we met, and has received numerous awards for all of her leadership. I want you to meet my friend and game changer, Trisha Cunningham. Trisha, welcome to Say It Skillfully.
Molly, it is so great to be here. I've loved to see what you've been doing since we first met and helping other leaders.
Yes. So we should tell audience how this happened, because we met when we were babies and we both got, one of these things, life serendipity is, these opportunities that happen and you kind of, maybe you don't know what you're doing and you say yes, so maybe share with folks when we were both part of this International Women's Forum leadership development program, especially for women. It was relatively early on in the 30-year period they've had the program. So Trisha, how did you find your way to it?
TI absolutely invested in its leaders, and I had no idea what this program was. I was just sort of tapped and said, Trisha, I think you would be a great candidate for this for this leadership program. And it's an international program. And I love learning. I mean, I consider myself a leadership program junkie because I feel like I can always learn and I'm a work in progress, no doubt. And so I got this application, which was a bit daunting in itself. And I was sort of told what this program was and how competitive it was and all this. So, I mean, I poured my heart and soul into this application, and then we had to do these interviews and everything to be selected. But it is honestly the best program that I think I'd ever gone through, just because of the experience and the people. I think it really gets down to the people and the way that we connected. And we all realized that yes, we went to Harvard and we went to Cambridge and the UK and we went to New York and we went to Mexico City and we went to these wonderful opportunities and got to meet these amazing women who were there, our wind beneath our wings, and we had our mentors. But I think it was our group of people that just came from different backgrounds, that we knew that we could call each other up after this program or even during the program and say, hey, have you ever had this happen? And these were our peeps. And I think we learned together, we grew together, and then we found a way to be able to help each other together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That was a similar experience. And I often say to folks that have these moments when you think in the past of these mortifying moments of all the things that you did, that you're like, did I say that? Did I really do that? And so that's all part of our learning, folks. It happens to everyone. And a big thing for me was just, when you're in your own bubble in whatever one company you're in, you just don't necessarily get to see as broadly. And so the possibility, and they brought in women who are, a generation ahead. And we're like, wow, you can do that, or that's happened to you, or I'm not the only one. And so I do want to encourage all listeners that to be able to branch out and reach out. There's learning from every corner of the universe. And, I think this whole notion of Say It Skillfully is about being grounded in oneself. And this program, I think, really was a big, big part of that early in my career. So Trisha, my friend, we are wowed because I'm really dying to hear about the second chapter, because I knew more about TI, but I would love listeners to get to know you a little bit and just share how your whole journey started.
So I grew up in Kentucky. My parents were only able to get an 8th grade education, but they believed in the value of education for us because they wanted it. They just did not have that opportunity to do it. They were super smart. And we wanted to think about what we could do in the future. So my dad, he worked as a maintenance worker in a tire company, and he said, you need to do something in computers. So I went to college and I chose my major of computer information systems because my dad said, you need to do something in computers. And I love math and science and all that. I mean, that is definitely where I geek out. But I had no idea what it was. And because I did not have sort of that pedigree, I had no idea that you really even had to register for college. I went to registration thinking, well, isn't this just sort of like high school? You just go choose your classes, you pay, and then you go. And I had gotten a partial scholarship, but I had never applied to go to my hometown university, which is where I was going to go. And so they said, well, you actually need to apply before you can register to go to classes. I mean, and so these are the kinds of things that when you don't have that, you just have to figure it out. And so I went in and was able to finally get registered and get going. They were very, very nice to get me going, but it was not the norm for someone in my high school to go to college. And so our counselors didn't provide a lot of that education because most people ended up getting a job either on the farm or in the factory. And that was the norm for most. And so just even that basic kind of things I didn't know about. But whenever I went to college, I've always loved people. And even in high school, I was one of those people that I was involved in everything. So it really wasn't hard for me whenever I first went to college and tried to connect with other people overall. I got a student worker job at first, and then I went on, and this is sort of a funny story. My first real job, I was a staff administrative assistant for 20-hour weeks for a program called American Humanics. That program is now called the Nonprofit Leadership Studies Program. And the purpose of that program was to teach college students how to be executives in nonprofits. I typed the first internship guide for that program because it was a brand new program on campus. They would send around the job sheets sort of saying what the new jobs were. And I was like, well, I could do that. It's 20 hours a week and it pays twice as much as my student worker job. So if they're going to be flexible, maybe I should apply for that. And so that was a lot of fun. But, it's sort of that full circle moment. Now, what am I doing? I'm an executive at a nonprofit. But, it's like I could not have even orchestrated that if I had tried overall. And so I went there, I got my computer degree. I ended up deciding that I would, where did I want to go? My husband and I knew that, fiance at the time knew that I probably wouldn't be able to get a job in computer related technology in the area that we had grown up in. So he had gone ahead and moved to the Houston area. And so I focused my search in the Houston area. I had some friends that had worked at Texas Instruments, and I had interviewed with them on campus. So as soon as graduation was over, I went down, interviewed for a few positions, got offers for all the positions. And that's how my career started at TI. And they moved me to Dallas in 99. And I've had 5 different jobs whenever I was there. And it was a wonderful experience. And I had just a great opportunity to be able to learn so much about every part of business. And I just love that.
That's awesome. We're going to come back to TI. I'm really piqued by the fact that you literally showed up at college. You're like, I'm ready to take classes.
Okay.
Right. So
yeah.
Your parents, God bless them, right, got to that 8th grade education. If you can go back, where because you're like, your dad's like, you're going to go to college. The other kids are not. Did you feel like, you're like, it's okay, you don't go to college? I mean, how did you feel like it fit in? Things were like normal? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I just moved to a different phase. I was like, okay, college. I did have an older brother, so I had seen him in college, and he was 5.5 years older than me. So we would never cross paths. We actually didn't become close. We were just sort of two people that lived in the same house until probably I got in college. But he was very successful in college. He was the president of the Student Government Association and all that. So, I mean, he did an amazing work. He's now an attorney in the DC area in the patent law. But, I went and I sort of had to help navigate my way through, and I've never shied away from a challenge. Even today, I love good challenges. So I was able to figure it out. And I had people along the way that if I wasn't afraid to ask questions, if I had a question, and then it didn't really ruffle me. I joined a sorority and ended up getting a tennis scholarship, but I didn't play tennis. The office suite that I was in for my job, the tennis coach was behind me. She said, "Hey, I've got a dorm scholarship that's going to go to waste." And she said, "If you want to sort of be our spirit coordinator, and do like signs on the doors of the tennis team before matches to sort of get them hyped up," said, "I'll give you the dorm scholarship because I have a student, one of my players is going to be working from home. I mean, going to be living at home. So she's not going to use it. So it'd go to waste. But if you could do something for me on the tennis team." So, yeah. So, it's just about relationships and people help each other.
That is crazy. Talk about your just parents' influence. I mean, does that the fact? See, I never knew that you were wired to just so naturally just there's kind of it's like that naive courage. You're like, oh yeah, I don't know, I better ask. And that would not have been easy for me. I just have to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how about your mom's role in watching you? Because she's cheering for you to do something she never had a chance to do.
Yeah, well, I will say both my mom and dad knew the value of education.
Mm.
I think my dad, because he was in sort of the factory and the work world, and he could see what was happening in the offices, he knew that he wanted his children not, he worked in the maintenance department. So he was all over a tire factory where he worked, and he wanted to make sure that we had that better life. And so I think he had a front row seat to what college could do, and he knew the people that worked in the office had degrees and they had college education, and he didn't want us working on the factory. He wanted us to be able to have a job there. He definitely is one of those people that he would have given me every last dime if I would have told him that I needed it. And he was our biggest cheerleader overall. And when my brother decided he was going to go to law school, my mom was freaking out a little bit about, well, why do you need to do that? You've got a college education. And my dad was the one that said, "Look, you can do this. He can do this. We're going to support him, whatever we need to do." And we would not be here today, my brother and I both, if it was not for them. And one of the things that we were able to do, because they invested in us, we wanted to invest back in other students a couple of years ago. We set up a scholarship at the university where we're at, because most of the students that still go to that university are first-time college students, first-generation college students. And so we sort of set up a scholarship for first-generation college students there as well, in
That's
honor of our mom and dad. It's named in their honor. So they may have not have gone to college, but they're giving scholarships. They have a scholarship in their name.
That warms my heart. That's amazing. So Texas Instruments, and of course, this is back when you joined, but that, it's a big company. There's a lot of navigating. And so for some of perhaps the earlier in career people listening, curious, they had a first job. Did you look for the next job? Just talk to us how you kind of floated through there, because you had some spectacular roles.
So my first role was in a very much a commodity semiconductor business, and it was one that if I had not been a new college hire, I would have been let go, because they had a protection program. If you were there a year or less as a new college hire, you were protected, and they had layoffs within the first year that I was at TI in that particular division. It was a very cyclical market. If it was good, it was really, really good, but if it was bad, it was really bad. And so I got to see a lot of people that when I started to work, they got let go just because of the layoff. And here I still was. And my boss took a voluntary buyout program.
Ooh.
So here I was a year out of college, and I was basically managing the department that we were in, because it was a very small group of people. And I did that for probably 6 to 9 months before the manager of the department officially made me the leader of that department. And so I was a manager a year after college, at TI. And but that was just one of the things that didn't scare me either, because I'd always taken on these leadership roles and challenges. And I was just like, you figure it out and you ask for help. And I am very competitive. For people that know me, I like to win, and I'm going to roll up my sleeves and do whatever it takes to be able to win. And win doesn't just mean me. That win means whatever we're doing, whatever we're accomplishing, we're going to do that. And I'm going to make sure we can do our best at it. So it's not about me being number one. It's about whatever I'm doing, I want us to succeed and win.
That's crazy. So, how about some of those tough situations? And maybe you didn't have any, but you see things going on. This is the Say It Skillfully podcast. So, I'm
Right.
curious if you can remember times when, gosh, I did speak up, didn't go so well, or I wish I had spoken up. And I'm just wondering how that went for you.
Well, like I said, I was never unafraid to say my piece. Probably one of the most pivotal times that I can remember in my career at TI, I was in my second role at the company, and I had the opportunity to be able to present on my program. And this was a very differentiated market. It was an area that the company was trying to figure out where were going to go with this program. And I was presenting to the CEO. I was an individual contributor. Well, not an individual contributor, but I was down in the organization. But I had an opportunity to present on my program to the CEO, and I presented, and he asked me a question. He said, if there's one thing that we could do different or better to make this product do better, what would it be? And I gave him my honest opinion of what I thought it should be. And I said, I think we need to invest more in this, and we need to do these things because this product is too hard to use right now. We've got to make it easy. And here's what we could do to make it easy. The next day, I got a call from my manager, and he said, so what did you say whenever you had this conversation? I said, well, he asked me a question and I answered. He said, well, he wants to do it. And I was like, okay, let's go. And I think that was just one of the things that it was a learning moment for me. Number one, you always have to be prepared. If you're going to represent an area, there's always things that we know that we can do better. We haven't arrived. It's not nirvana. What is that continuous improvement? And we always have to know what that next thing could be. If you have additional resources, if you have something else, what should we stop doing? What should we start doing? But always be ready because you never know whenever those opportunities are going to come up. And I think that was the moment whenever sort of helped me to be known more inside the big conglomerate of TI. And I got to be able to be pulled into some other projects as a result of that as well. It was after that role that I managed more at a division level for what we were doing in our area and the marketing and communications. And then from there, I went on to corporate and managed our sort of corporate level communications. And then from there on into a public affairs type role. But I'm not sure if I would have been seen if I hadn't been ready for that moment.
Yeah, that is so fabulous. Okay, let's talk a bit about some of the learning moments ourselves. Maybe, I think we often hear fail fast, don't hesitate to make a risk. We all know that that's kind of scary to do at times. And I am wondering if there are any particular moments where you took a left and you're like, gosh, I should have taken a right, and how that went for you.
Um, I think we had a few of those things. I mean, certainly the semiconductor market in particular got pretty crowded pretty quick. And it was, we had to try some things that were different. I can remember one thing that we did to try to sort of break through the noise. And looking back at it now, I'm like, I can't believe they approved this. But we were doing TV ads because all the trade publications had gotten so thick that we had to break through the noise. And so we tried to do them targeted. We did all the stuff to be able to see where would engineers go to look, but there was absolutely no relevance to these ads to a general consumer market. And I'm not sure that it really achieved what we needed it to do. And if I were to go back now and if I said, okay, what was the one big thing that you probably shouldn't have done? It was probably those. It was a lot of fun. We enjoyed learning the process and how we could do it and target it. But we were working with our ad agency and decided that was a way to break through the noise. And, that was before the days of social media and before you could do things like that. I mean, I was there 30 years, so it was a while ago. But I would say that's probably one of the things, and we recovered from it. And we were able to go back and do a lot more targeted things whenever media got to the point where we could do some more of those things as well that were probably a lot more effective than TV ads. But it was a great learning opportunity
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So, how did you? Oftentimes, folks ask me, how do I get a mentor? Because it's so much of those bigger organizations, it's really helpful if other people are looking out for you, ride their coattails a little bit. So did you reach out proactively, Trisha? How did the mentoring work for you?
Uh, First of all, I think a lot of it just happened naturally. If, I tried to do a good job, I tried to represent me and the organization well. And before I really got into the program, the IWF Fellows program, I probably really didn't even understand truly what a mentor meant and what that role was, because it was nothing that I had a formal relationship with before. But I would reach out. I would go and talk to people and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And now looking back, those were people that were mentors for me. And I would ask them questions. I can remember one moment with someone. I had been asked to take on an additional role, and it was a group level role. It was going to be taking sort of a systems level approach versus a product level approach. But I was still going to have to keep my product level day job. And so they were asking me to do more of this work. And I was like, oh, I don't know. That's just going to be more. And I don't know if I can do it well and all that. And she looked at me. She said, Trisha, she said, if someone asks you and believes enough in you to ask you to take on this challenge, you better think twice before turning it down, because next time they won't come to you. And I'm like, oh, that's really good advice. And I've remembered that. And that was probably advice from, 25 years ago that I continue to now use and tell other people, because I think sometimes people shy away from opportunities because they think I'm too busy. And what I had to do and learn to do was think about, what could I not do that was less important, so that I could focus on some of these big things that were maybe more important that I was being asked to do as well. And I always encourage those that I talk to, don't shy away from it. This could be the best opportunity that you may have, but talk to your leader and say, hey, I think these are the things that I'm doing that are taking a lot of time, but I'm not sure they're quite getting the results we want. Could I carve some of those off so that I can take on this new project? Because we don't want to burn people out, but how do we get them to be the most effective and happy and employees that are continuing to grow?
Such great advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Trisha. Talking about the burnout, and I can see you're competitive and you want to win and you're going to like run, run, run. Do you recall moments where you just really did over push it? And I'm a big fan of kind of sprinting to the end. So I'm not here to
Yeah.
say it's a walk in the park all the time, but there can be these moments where we get swallowed up and it gets away from us. So I'm wondering
Mhm.
how you navigated to stay true to yourself and really your own health and wellness.
Yeah. I mean, there were several times at TI that we had big projects, and we would just sort of work nonstop on those projects over time. And I can remember one time one of my leaders sending a very nice gift card to my husband, and with a handwritten note and saying, thank you so much for taking care of things at home while Trisha was working on this project. We know that I hope both of you can go out and enjoy a nice dinner on us. And my husband tells that story to this day, because he's like, okay, thank you. Because he said she was thanking me for being there so Trisha could spend more time on this project, because it was something that had a deadline. I mean, it was morning till night, but just to be able to do some of those little things. And it was a project that, it was probably over a month time period that we had to just be heads down on this particular project overall. But I can remember that. And then sort of fast forwarding to the pandemic, I would say probably one of the times I was the most tired, as far as just physically, emotionally tired, was during the pandemic. What we did was right out on the front lines at the North Texas Food Bank. We had all of a sudden so many people that needed access to food that had never needed access before. We had to totally pivot 180 degrees on how we were serving, because we could not have in-person models due to the things. And so it took brain power. It took a lot of these things that I knew from crisis management and things from TI, and how we've set to put up our quote unquote war room and our crisis management room and how we manage that. But it went on for months, right? And I was here early in the morning before daylight, and I was here late at night after the sun had gone down, 7 days a week for a long time. And my board actually said, you are going to take 2 weeks off, and you are not going to do this, because said we need you, and we need you,
Healthy.
because they knew. We were going and going, and it was probably 5 months. Well, it was in August, so it was probably 5, 6 months after we sort of was doing full bore, full speed, and said, no one can do this full speed for that long. And I had done that for my team. I had made sure they had taken time off, but I hadn't done it myself. And so they said, no, you're going to do this, and you're going to take 2 weeks off. So we did, and went to Alaska for 2 weeks.
That's awesome. Okay. This is a perfect segue. So you're thriving. You're clearly thriving at TI. You're having cool jobs. Give folks kind of the run up. When did you figure out, again, I want to change stories here? And how did you navigate all that?
So my track record at TI was every 5 to 6 years, I would get bored because I felt like I had done everything I could in that position to be able to make it the best it could be. And so I was like, I am not being as effective here. I am not a run and maintain kind of manager. I like challenge. I like continuous improvement. And, that can be a negative as well, because sometimes I don't stop and smell the roses and celebrate those kind of things. I've already moved on to the next thing. But I had been in my last role, which honestly was the best role ever. It was an amazing role at TI to be the Chief Citizenship Officer. And this was during a time whenever sustainability reporting was coming up, and we were sort of a leader in how we were getting reporting done in the semiconductor industry. And we were doing things. We had taken our local Dallas strategy and made it global, which that was a lot of fun for me as far as employee engagement and giving back in the community, and putting together an overall strategy, working with our foundation on where we were going to be doing investments and really trying to make an impact versus what I would say just checkbook philanthropy of just writing a check of whoever. What do we want to be? Who do we want to go? So that was really interesting to me. But we had gotten to the point that all that was in place. I had great people that worked on the team, so they were doing the work. And I felt like there wasn't an appetite to continue to move forward in some of the areas that we could, which was a valid business decision. And it was the year that I was going to be having my 30th anniversary. So I had to do a whole lot of soul searching, speaking to my leader overall, and because some of the things I wanted to do, just like, they didn't want to do. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. But I will stay this last year, but know that by the end of the year, I feel like if I ever am going to do anything else, because I'd been a career TI, or if I ever wanted to do anything else, I needed to do it now. And so I probably worked more after I left TI in those 6 months between leaving in December of 2016. I had a graduation party, not a retirement party, because my graduation party is you take your skills and experience and then you go and have that impact in some other area. So I did not call it a graduation party. I didn't call it a retirement party. I called it a graduation party, because that's what you do. You graduate and go on to something else. And that was fully my intent to do that. And I had a few things that was of interest to me. And one of them was absolutely a leadership role in an organization that I felt like could have a greater foundational impact on lifting up the community. I never knew it was going to be the North Texas Food Bank. I made the decision to leave TI in January 2016. We identified sort of the plan for my role successor in July of 2016. We made it public in October, and then I had my graduation party middle of December. So it was a year-long process to be able to do that. The same week I had my graduation party, the woman who ran the North Texas Food Bank announced that she was stepping down because she had a terminal illness. And I sent her a card and just thanked her for her legacy and all the work that she had done, still not putting together that this might be a position that I would end up going to. I had another offer for a CEO of another organization. It was an organization that needed a turnaround. And I ended up turning it down because in talking with the board, they weren't ready for change yet. And I thought, I'm not going to go into that position if they say they want to turn around, but their behavior is telling me they don't. I'm not going to go in there. And glad I made that decision because the person they ended up hiring was there less than a year. But I just try to keep my options open. And that's something I always tell people that I talk to as well. Don't be stuck in just one particular area. Even inside TI, whenever there was something interesting that I thought was coming up, I would try to keep my options open whenever I get that 5 to 6 year itch. There were times that I definitely looked outside the company, but whenever I would go back in and talk to my manager, said, well, we've been actually thinking about you for this role. And even when you have to just sort of think about what it is. And it's not always a promotion either. One of the roles, whenever I moved into the last role that I had, my leader came to me and said, hey, I want you to do this. And I'm like, oh, and I said, yeah, but I said, I wouldn't be reporting to you directly anymore because the person that was over that group, she just said, trust me. She said, I think this is going to be the right path for you. I think this is the right skill set for you. And so I worked under another leader for a year, but obviously she had insight that I didn't. He had planned to leave. So then I did become back there. So sometimes you have to zig and zag, but it was the best job I had because, I got to create something there.
See, this whole idea of the relationships, you're deep in the relationships, Trisha, and then being able to trust, right? Because
Right.
that it could be hard. You say, well, it doesn't look good on paper. You could have your own ego take over. That does not going to work for me. And having that courage and deep trust, that's a big thing. And folks, we talk about this kind of easily, but sometimes that can be really hard. It's a real moment of come to truth. So how did you end up going there? And then I'm just dying to hear your whole early on experience and I had run a nonprofit for just 18 months. It's a very different cadence potentially, right? So just
Sure.
so many growth opportunities and learnings.
Well, in my last role at TI, part of our job was working with nonprofits globally around the world. And I think what drew me to them is the people that worked there were just so passionate about what they did and their mission. And they wanted to be able to serve the best way they could. And I served on nonprofit boards before I came to the food bank for 15 years, all different kinds of nonprofits. And actually, it was IWF that got me doing that because one of the things my mentor told me was that I was too insular to TI because everything I was doing was focused on TI and TI's growth. There was nothing that I was doing that was helping me to be able to get outside the organization and to create connections in the community beyond my work. And yes, I had children and I did things like, Girl Scout troop and church stuff and things like that, but that was very different. It wasn't in the professional realm. I was the mom then. And so I started looking at a nonprofit board and I started seeking and I thought, with my background, I would not have been able to do what I was able to do unless I had people that were behind me, that were supporting me, that were pushing me, that were helping me to be my best. And so I was looking for a nonprofit that I felt like was really helping to lift up women or girls and help them to be able to be their best, helping them to thrive and helping them to be trained to be able to move forward. So my first nonprofit board, I looked and I went to Girls Inc. in Dallas, and they're strong, smart, and bold is their mantra for their girls, and they absolutely were. And it was a great after-school program that provided a safe environment for those kids. But it was from that board service that I just learned so many things about how nonprofits operated, how boards operated, and some different things that you had to be able to do there. And from that board, so many of those board members were on other boards. Said, Trisha, you would be a great board member for this, and you'd be a great board member for this. And so that's where my nonprofit board service sort of grew. And so as I would roll off one board, I would go on to another and to another. And I just met so many wonderful people that cared so much about our community, but also got to see the work of the nonprofit. And I would think, man, I wish they had XYZ that we have at TI. Man, I wish they had that. And sometimes I would connect them to resources. Like I managed our research team, and sometimes we would need to do a survey or something about that. And then I got very involved in nonprofit governance. And that was one of the things the last year I was at TI. I said, I really want to get my governance fellowship and through the National Association of Corporate Directors, which corporate boards is something I was interested in and still am to some degree as well. But I loved board governance because what I realized in the nonprofit world is you have to have a strong board, and that puts your nonprofit at risk if you don't have a strong board and they're not operating the way they should, because you will not be able to grow. You will not have the resources or the strategy that you need if you don't have that strong board behind you. So that was something that was important to me as well. So whenever I made the decision that one of the things I wanted to do was potentially be a leader in a strong nonprofit that could help lift the community up, one of the things I looked at whenever I was being approached by an organization was the board. I told you about the one that I turned down because I didn't think the board was ready for change. There was another organization that I was approached by a recruiter about, and I started looking at the board, and the very high profile founder was still on the board. And I've been on boards, and that never worked because everyone always looked to that founder for their thoughts, and it sort of took away any kind of authority that the CEO would have if they had a difference of opinion. And so I said no to that one just because I was like, you're not setting up your CEO for success, because this person is still going to be the point person because everybody on that board knows this beloved person. And so, I was very choosy in that, but that whole nonprofit space wasn't foreign to me totally. But whenever I did get the job at the food bank, and my husband said he knew before I did, because every time I would go and talk to someone else, this was the one that I would just come home more excited about. Oh man, this is happening. Oh, I could see how we could do this. And I would always research every organization. I would try to go into depth, and I would put together my own SWOT analysis for the organization. And I would try to be, if it just based on the information that I have available, here are the things that I think that we should probably work on for the organization. Here's what's going well for the organization. And I always brought those into the interviews. And I love that process of just sort of doing the research and figuring it out. But fast forward, they offered me the job, which I was very grateful for, was talking to people. Well, then I come into the organization, and you start looking, you start seeing the areas that we knew that we had some opportunities in. It was a great organization. We were doing great things, had great leadership, people that really cared about it. But I could see the opportunity, having worked on the business side for 30 years, of where we could do things differently. And so that was a challenge, because I always, anytime we introduced something new, it felt like more work to the people that were in the organization. So whenever you put in place things like project management, okay, let's define what the project is, what the time frame is, what are the resources you need, who's going to be involved in this, all the things you do with RACI models and all that. We were putting some of those kind of things in place, and that was a new concept. But we had to have deadlines. We had to have the ability to be able to manage our progress on those things. We enhanced even our performance management system and really made it more goals focused, and made sure people understood about goals, and we brought in more training. One of the things I will tell you from my TI experience, they invested in their people. They invested in training. TI, the acronym, sometime known for them as Training Institute, because we had a certain number of hours of training that we needed to get every year. But one of the things on the nonprofit side that isn't always available to employees in nonprofits is good training. So we started being a little scrappy, and we brought in people that could help us in particular areas that we needed to have training in. And we had great people that could be pro bono. We leaned into coaching. We brought in a quality organization. So there were just a lot of those foundational things. It was a challenge for those that had sort of grown up in the nonprofit space, because they said, well, you're just turning it into a corporation. So that was a aha. So I'm not connecting the dots. So I had to always remember anything that we tried something new or different, that we always kept it back, that the reason why we're doing this is we want to be the best organization we can so that we can most effectively and efficiently serve those neighbors who need food on their table. And if we can be better and we can increase our ability to serve their needs through these kind of programs, this is what we need to do. It's going to help us as an organization be good stewards of the dollars that are coming in, making sure that we're getting them dispersed in the right way, that we're managing projects effectively. We're going to be able to make go, no go decisions. And so, yes, I did come in and implemented a lot of these corporate practices. Some of them were well received. The person I hired is my COO. That first year had a background from Microsoft and a lot of supply chain and things from Microsoft. And so he was primarily responsible for making sure that we had a lot of those put in overall in those first few years. And I'm so thankful we did, because if we had not foundationally done that, we would not have been able to have served in the pandemic the way that we did. And I felt like everything just sort of lined up for a reason. It was hard doing it, but there were so many also in the organization. You had a few naysayers, but there were so many people that, thank you. I love this. I'm going to use this. This is going to make my job so much easier, and to gain alignment and to have shared goals and to be able to align on what those goals are, because we were having people trying to do things and they would get toward the end of the year, it wasn't there. And then it's like, sorry, but your emergency is not my priority right now. I have things and so having to teach people how to align just on trying to get things done. And I think we just have such a wonderful environment now and great people that are committed to our cause. And yes, they may not always like to use the tools, because yes, it does take extra time, but they know the value of it down the line as well, and why it makes us a better organization. So that was always a challenge. At the for-profit area, you think about what's your EPS, what's your return to shareholders. I try to equate it on the nonprofit side. We have all the same kind of things in the nonprofit space. We have very smart people. We have donations. That's our sales team. We have research. We have business analytics. We had to upgrade our technology. That was another thing we had to do whenever came in. And now we're like all in on technology. But we have all these same components. They just look a little different in the nonprofit space than they do in the for-profit space. And you have to be a lot more nimble with the resources and a lot more flexible, because you're expected to do more with less, which is a common theme that I had at TI. Whenever we had to tighten our belts, and we were still expected to do more, even with fewer resources. And so those kind of things I was able to bring in as well too. But at the nonprofit, you always have to make sure that you keep your mission and those that you serve at the center of everything you do, because the ROI you get on the nonprofit side is if you can serve your mission. And for me, it was a huge weight on my shoulders that if we were not successful, people would go hungry. And that was not anything that I wanted on my shoulders. I always wanted to make sure that we could do the best we could do to make sure that everyone who needed food had access to food.
So I'm marveling, Trisha, at how purpose-built your first 30 years were to get you here. It's kind of like you couldn't have done it. You couldn't have scripted it any better.
Well, and I didn't script it. I mean, I am a person of faith, and I do believe that it was divine intervention. I think everything along the way, everything that I was involved with through the 30 years, both on inside the company and with nonprofits that I worked with, all of that I'm using today in this job. And I could not have scripted that. I just had to be open to be able to get those opportunities.
Yeah. And could you share, so I love the just kind of learnings, the different sectors, the growth internally, the Trisha learning about myself. What were some of the ahas about your own self?
I was in a very male dominated field, but I think I was blind to that until it was pointed out to me. Whenever I went back and I looked like in college, and I realized I can still remember to this day the 4 women that were in the program. We would get together and chat together, but I never really thought about that being a barrier for me. I don't know. I just was never thought. I just thought, okay, you can do this. I guess it was never a challenge that I really thought about. And then going into an engineering field, but I went more into the marketing space. So there were more females in the marketing space than there were in the technical electrical engineering, because my degree was more software engineering. But I love the business and marketing, and that's why I went more on the business side. But still, as a whole, as a company, there were a lot more men than there were females. I guess I wasn't inhibited, and I never had been. That just wasn't part of my nature to be inhibited to do that. I would say even today, it's not something that is scary for me necessarily to go and look at a new challenge and think bigger. I probably have more of an issue of being too forward sometimes and not forward enough. And I've had to learn to listen more, I would say, particularly in this role versus being out there. And I will talk a little bit about that difference as well, too, and something that I had to learn. And this has to do with leadership and management overall. I had to learn to listen because I was always the one that I think what I had gotten rewarded for was my results. I delivered results, and I was a person that was out there delivering results. When you're that mid-level manager, you still have to deliver results while you're also managing a team and helping them deliver results. When you get more to the senior level leadership, though, that switches. And it's your job to empower your team to deliver the best results, to set the right clear priorities, to help them to make sure they have the resources they need to be successful, to continuously monitor, and then make sure that they're able to deliver on what's needed. And you help them to break down any barriers. And that's hard. When you're used to being that person that's getting the accolades. Remember, I said I was competitive. When you're used to being that person getting the accolades for getting the results and your team getting the results, and then you move into a different role, you feel like, well, what am I doing now? I'm not, this person's getting, they're doing great work and I love my team and this is what they're doing and this is what they're doing and they're doing great work and I want them to get the recognition for that. But you sort of have a little bit of that empty space because you're not hands-on doing the work anymore. So I had to come to terms with the fact that that wasn't my job. My job was to help empower others to do it and to help them to do that. And then we all celebrate that success together. But to do that, sometimes I had to be quiet and I had to listen. One of the CEOs of TI, whenever we were in New York and traveling, and it was a new CEO that we were just making a transition, which I got to work with amazing CEOs at TI. But we were there and I said, tell me, what's one of the things that you've learned the most in this? And I haven't forgotten this, and I have to remind myself of it continuously. He said, I have to not be the first person to speak in a room. And I said, oh, tell me more. And he said, if I speak up first, then I shut down the room. Nobody is going to contest me. And I am missing out on some other ideas that maybe be better than what I would do. I'm always going to have an opinion. And at the end of the day, it's my decision. But he said, I need to make sure I hear other thoughts because it could actually be better than what I'm going to bring to the table. And I'm like, that is very interesting. And I hadn't really thought about that because to me, I'm still just Trisha. I'm not, and I love ideas. And I can chase squirrels all day long and be happy about that. And what if we did this? And what if we did that? And all this. And I realize that sometimes I tire my team out if I get too far because they think they have to do it. And so I've actually given my executive team, we have enough trust right now that if I bring an idea to the table and if it's not the right idea, I let them know it's okay to say no. This is an idea. If this isn't the right idea, we have to be open. But if it's not the right idea and we're doing something here and it's going to detract us from being successful there, then we shouldn't do it. And I want their thoughts first. So I've learned to try to let others speak before I throw my opinion in so that I don't derail wonderful ideas.
Wise words. Wise words. I love it. So we could go on and on. I'm blown away by how much we've already covered, but we have to take it to a wrap. So
Yep.
quick rapid fire. If you had a do-over, assuming you are exactly where you are, is there one do-over you'd share?
Oh, goodness. Not really. I mean, not really. I would say in one of my roles at TI, it was less gratifying for me, but I learned so much even through that process that I'm grateful for the opportunity that I had. The do over, and it was more in the corporate communications area because in a B2B area, part of our job was to stay out of the news as much as it was to be in the news sometimes.
Hmm.
And that wasn't gratifying for me. Nobody could see all the effort and time it took to be able to talk a reporter down on and giving them accurate facts so that they realize there's no story here. Or so that would be something. I would say anytime that I got put into a situation where I felt like me or my team's integrity was questioned, um, that was a challenge because that's something I stand on is that. And if anybody challenges that for me or my team, I sort of mama bear would come out. And I'm like, no, that is not accurate. And, and don't make accusations without that. And so probably, again, it's that listening to understand more why they might have come to a conclusion that might not be accurate. Those are some of the do-overs I would have, would just be, again, it's listening more, talking less.
Love it. Love it. You've had so many accomplishments, Trisha. Is there a proudest one?
Oh, my family is my proudest moment. I have, two wonderful children, a husband of 38 years, and my daughter and her husband just blessed us with a granddaughter 5 months ago, and it has changed my perspective. So I do now what I do for the next generation. I want her to have a better community. I want her to be able to thrive. I want her to not have any gender bias or any issues that are going to keep her from being her best in whatever it is she decides she wants to do. And so it just puts an additional emphasis, I think, on some of the work that all of us do to help us to lift up that next generation.
Oh, I love it. And congratulations. Okay, rapid fire. This would be your third. What profession would you do in your next life?
Oh, goodness. Well, I do love serving on boards, and I love learning. I love challenges. So, in my next life, if there was a next life, after taking all these skills and experiences of running, large programs in multinational corporations to now being the CEO of the 87th largest nonprofit in the country, I'd love to be able to take that expertise to other companies and see what value I could bring to them in maybe a corporate board, for-profit board space.
Nice, nice. Any nicknames you can share with us?
Oh God, no, not really. Sometimes my brother calls me Trish. Most people call me Trisha. One of the things that's happened to me throughout my life with my name being spelled Trisha, I get Tricia. I had one bold salesperson call me one time and I didn't even click to me for like 15 seconds what he was talking about. And I picked up the phone. This was when I was still at TI and said, "Hey, Pat, how's it going?" I said, "I think you have the wrong number." And said, "Well, isn't this Pat Cunningham?" I said, "No, it's not." I said, "I think you must have a different one." "Well, like Patricia Cunningham?" I said, "Nope, my name's Trisha. So you must have a different person." And so, but it didn't click. Nobody had ever done that before because my name isn't Patricia. It's just Trisha. So anyway, funny, I guess,
I love
story
it.
there.
Finally, favorite food or cuisine?
Oh, well, I would say there's a couple. Number one, you can't go wrong with anything here in Texas as far as any kind of Mexican food goes. I love my good Mexican salsa, but I'm allergic to cilantro, so I have to be very selective in that. So that's something I choose my Mexican restaurants on if I can get salsa without cilantro. And then I do love a good steak. So I give me a good steak, and then I am not shy about my pizza either. So
Good. I love it. Okay. You've shared so much. Thinking of yourself, reflecting on your story, was there a top takeaway for you?
one of the things that I've learned and then I try to share with others is I talk about being bold. Number one, you have to believe that you can do hard things. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that there are others that believe in you and that you can do it. I know so many women in particular suffer with imposter syndrome. Women can do hard things. And even if you haven't done it before, I've never been a CEO before, but you can do hard things. Oh, you have to be open to opportunities and just don't, and really evaluate those. We talked about that earlier in the program. L, you have to know when to lead and when to be led. And even as a leader, sometimes you need to let other people take that leadership role and empower them and hold them accountable for their leadership, because that's the only way that they're going to learn and grow. And the organization is better because everyone, you need to think about how you bring the right people together with different opinions than what you have to make your organization whole and better, and to be able to think about things differently. And D is differentiate, especially for young leaders. Whenever you can differentiate what you're bringing and your value add into an organization, that makes you a stronger leader and will help you to continue to grow in that leadership space.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Finally, what was it like for you to share your journey with us today?
I just don't think I'm anything special. I'll be honest. I'm just Trisha. I am still just that little girl from Kentucky that had a very blessed life to have two parents that loved me, that encouraged me, that gave me that wind beneath my wings. And I can only inspire to try to do that as well. And so if there's anything that was said today about my story, I'm pretty transparent about things. If there's anything about my story that helps others, then this has been time well spent.
Trisha, thank you for all that you shared and inspiring us how you're making a difference for those who need it most. The Dallas communities are so blessed for how you serve, my friend. So I want to appreciate you and how you are part of the solution, helping all of us to be safe, seen, and heard in our true and very, very best selves. And I know we have a reunion that we're getting to get together. So early next year, I'll look forward to a hug in person.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. And thank you for having me as a guest today.
Yeah, it was our pleasure. Okay, folks, as you've heard, Trisha's found her authentic voice and shown us that it's life-changing and it's benefiting her career, her relationships, and everything that she does. I want to help you do the same. I've launched the Say It Skillfully 101 training program to help you speak up, be yourself, and make your words matter. So check it out on sayitskillfully.com. And my final thought, to quote my idol, Frances Hesselbein, to serve is to live. And I just want to add my heartfelt appreciation, shout out to the skillful Eric Patton, who is behind the scenes diligently making this show possible, and the driving force for all the sayitskillfully.com and our learning programs. And that is a wrap, folks. I want to thank you for joining us. Please be part of the solution and kindly share this show. Amplify Trisha's voice. Reflect on your top takeaways. And no, I'm cheering for you to be who you are and say what needs to be said skillfully so that you and those around you have the shared reality that makes work and life much, much better.